There will be spoilers ahead. Lots of spoilers, so be careful, won't you? You know, there's nothing I like better than to close the door, sit back, warm up the old turntable, and put on some songs by those four Liverpudlians, Mark, Dave, Billy, and Bob. Yep, that's their names. Don't be fooled. You
Wait, what?
may have heard differently. Maybe you were hoodwinked into the idea that they were John, Paul, George, and Ringo, but this week's movie finally puts the record straight. Or, wait. Were they really Robin, Maurice, Barry, and Peter? I'm so confused. Well, there's no way out of this. It's my fault. I totally admit it. Broadcasting live from Heartland, USA, it's Max Mike Movies with this week's entry in our series, ladies and gentlemen, The Beatles, 1978's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which stars the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton, if you can truly call this starring. You know who is starring? It's that guy on my left, the 8th Bee Gee, Max Zeppo Gibb Levine. Say hi.
Zeppo Gibb Levine, sure, why not?
Hey, it's not my fault that's your middle name.
That's me. I'm well known for my Grammy-attended song, Hey, Look Over There.
Could be worse.
That was what I used to get into the Grammys.
Oh, okay. And I am the tall one with the long hair and the weird overbite, Mike 24th Frampton Loose. Hello. Hey, it makes as much sense as this week's movie. Oops! Well, before I give anything else away, let's slide into this week's poll question instead.
Ooh.
Poll question. Last week, we were desperate to know, what is your favorite parody movie? What? Did you say desperate?
Desperate.
Desperate. There was a huge passel of answers, so let's dive in. From Facebook, Dave started us off with, quote, I suppose Young Frankenstein comes to mind, I suppose. I have a soft spot for Blazing Saddles because I saw it in the right age, but I can't say it held up very well, end quote. He would not be the last one to mention old Mel Brooks. Thanks, Dave. Christine Santos was next with, quote, Men in Tights or Galaxy Quest, end quote. Oh, there's Mel again. Thanks, Christine. Angelo Patsalas added another to the list of Brooks's films with Spaceballs. Thanks, Angelo. Steve Strickland veered off with, quote, Date Movie, end quote. You know, I never saw that.
Oh, Lord, really?
Yeah, he likes it.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Made him laugh. That's cool.
Sure. Val Coons, producer and writer of that brilliant podcast, Q Footsteps, which I have nothing at all to do with, posted...
Nothing at all.
What's up, Doc? Though, I guess it's more of an homage than a parody. After that, the Mel Brooks films previously mentioned, end quote. After a moment's reflection, she then added, quote, oh, geez, just to look at all the other answers, how could I forget Airplane and Naked Gun? Airplane will always be one of my very favorite movies, end quote. Abram, Zucker, and Zucker finally make the list. Thanks, Val. Tyler Stewart, in an amazingly brief form, added right after Val, quote, ditto, end quote. I missed that film. Did you see that one?
I did. It really didn't get a lot of marketing, though.
Yeah, oh well. Didn't? Oh well. Thanks, Tyler. Jessington Miller gives us, quote, Men in Tights, always. Wait, is that a sequel?
Yep, that is. Men in Tights.
Always.
Men in Tights 2, always. I don't know, always tight.
Yeah, ooh. Package. Thanks, Jess. Matt Reisman tosses us a curveball, which we should have seen coming with, quote, Shaun of the Dead. I like genre parodies that are good stories on their own. Galaxy Quest is a close second, end quote. Good call. Thanks, Matt.
Nice.
Tony Kellner mentions one of my favorite movies, quote, Murder by Death, end quote.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a classic.
It's disgusting. I'll tell you later.
It's another one that doesn't necessarily age well in terms of appropriateness, but I think it's still funny.
Hey, one of the two Changs was actually Asian.
Yeah, and it's Wang.
Wang, right,
by
sorry.
the way.
Yes, it was. So it was. Thanks, Tony. Adam Mark makes it easy, quote, Everything Mel Brooks, end quote. Well,
okay.
There you go. Thanks,
sure.
Adam. Richard Tatum offered, quote, Student Bodies, awful but completely accurate parody, end quote. It's another one I hadn't heard of, but I will look up.
I know the name. I've never seen it.
Oh, thanks, Richard. Harry McCracken gave me one I had to look up just to be sure it was real. Quote, movie. One of my very, very favorite movies, and certainly my favorite of the movie parody era of the 1970s, Mel Brooks' Murder by Death, Airplane, etc. I've read the script for the unproduced sequel, end quote.
Was that movie? I only heard of movie as a punchline. It was one of those, you give the answer first and then do the question. The answer was movie. The question, what do we do after din din?
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. It's like sis boom ba.
Yeah.
Sis boom ba.
Boom ba.
Thanks, Harry. Javi Carl said, quote, The Naked Gun and or Airplane, end quote. Thanks, Javi.
Abram, Zucker, and Zucker.
Yep.
We
Beverly
love
Hills.
you boys.
Dr. Professor Rebecca Pelkey's choice was, quote, What We Do in the Shadows, which I think qualifies as parody, end quote. Hell yes, it does.
Sure it is. It's parody of reality shows. It's parody of vampire movies. Absolutely.
Yep. Thanks, Becca. Chrissy Becker brings us back to Mel with, quote, Young Frankenstein, end quote. Thanks,
That's
Chrissy.
Frankenstein.
Oh, sorry. It's Igor. One more vote for Young Frankenstein came from Liz Zielinski. Thanks, Liz. Kelly Cooper sneaked in, and I do mean sneaked, with, quote, I was thinking I didn't have a favorite parody movie, but I like a lot of the ones that have popped up here. One I didn't see here that's both a parody and a wonderful movie in its own right is Charade, the 1963 version of Close, end quote. Yeah, I asked her. I didn't have an answer yet. I asked her, that's a parody?
That's interesting. I want to hear what she says.
Yeah, but hey, thanks for bringing it up. I love that movie.
Yeah.
So. Brian McStravick popped in with, quote, You'll love this answer. Not another teen movie.
Oh, Lord.
I don't know if I love it because I haven't seen it. How about you?
I know that series, and ouch.
Oh, okay. Well, we love your answer anyway. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Brian Mundo, posting off the official Facebook page, commented, quote, I don't know, I'm not a big parody movie fan. Scary Movie was pretty funny, but by the 12th one, they were kind of dumb, end quote. I didn't know they had 12 of them.
I didn't know it took 12 for them to get dumb.
Oops. Thanks, Brian. And lastly, from the website, we have Vince, Stop Calling Me Snowy Opruzizi. Quote, I think Young Frankenstein is one of the best as it's funny but also seriously done. The music, set, cinematography are near perfect, as is the cast. Same with High Anxiety, but is dumb as well, maybe because of it. Top Secret cracks me up every time. I'm not even sure which genre it's, parodying. World War II spy movies, 50s musicals, end quote. I say all of the above.
Yeah, all of them.
So thanks, Vince. Thanks, Vince. Vinks. So, Max, this was your baby. How do you burp it? That's slang.
Well, of course, the obvious answer, I got to go with a lot of the majority, is Young Frankenstein. Yeah. But I got to say, I always thought Life of Brian was one of the greatest parodies of religious movies.
You mean like In Search of Historic Jesus?
Yep. Or, of course, the TV version, I Dream of Jesus.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yep. With Larry Hagman as Jesus, I remember.
Yes, and Jesus was kept in a small bottle and couldn't show his naval intelligence, whatever.
As it says in the Bible.
You're such a loon.
It's in the Book of Lear, I think.
Yeah, that's a Gnostic book, but we'll go there. Wow, that was deep.
Wow. Yeah, what about you? What's your top of your parody list?
I don't know. I mean, Mel Brooks is such an easy choice, and that's not a bad thing.
But there's a reason for it. There's a reason it's easy.
Now, Blazing Saddles is I mean, not least of which because it's got some really good parody of race relations. The problem with it is that these days people don't realize it's parody, and that's where we get into trouble. I like Young Frankenstein better as a movie.
Yeah, it's probably better done.
After that, I'm not so much of a Mel Brooks. I appreciate Mel Brooks. I just don't laugh out loud to Mel Brooks. That's fine. Yeah. I'm so used to parody songs, so I think Weird Al, but UHF wasn't a parody.
It
was a documentary. Really. I'll go with UHF because why the hell not? Because it's our show, and if I can say that's parody, why not? I mean, there's parodies in it, so yeah.
Yep.
But
that's cool.
As usual, We are really thankful for all your answers.
Thank you so much. There's bumpy bucks in the mail for all of you.
Well,
Trust us, they're in the
Bumpy
mail.
Bucks presses will be running 24/7 till all your bucks are printed, and we
Yep.
haven't forgotten the Bumpy Hut catalog. We're just hoping you have.
Yeah.
But there is a new poll question for this week.
Oh, goody. Do tell us what it is.
We want to know, what musician or band's music would you make a jukebox musical out of? Can it be done well? Is it a good thing? Let us know, won't you? Until then, let's get to some trivia, shall
Well,
we?
hang on. I know one. We should do the Beatles. No one's done that.
Next week, large bat, your head, a date.
Ow.
The show. Budget, $13 million. Take,
Wow.
$20 million. Strangely,
You're kidding.
I remember it having more impact. But no, maybe that's just the impact when it hit
I'm
the ground.
surprised they made their money back, but okay.
They kind of didn't. My guess is that, well, we'll get to this.
Yeah, we'll get to that, yeah.
Aerosmith, always the bridesmaid. They were choice number 2 to play the FVB. Kiss was number 1, but they wanted to do Phantom of the Park instead. And, of course, they were busy bleeding into ink vats so they could have their comic printed in real Kiss blood.
God. Yes, I
true. Look
remember
it up.
that. I had that issue.
Yeah, made me itchy.
Smelled funny.
Alice Cooper
Oh,
was in
Lord.
a rehab center when this movie was going on, but he got a 3-day pass to record his vocals and do his acting.
I see, and I'm sure the doctor was going, well, that was a mistake.
You seem worse, Mr. Mr. Cooper. Yeah. The Beatles, all alive at this point, certainly knew of this movie. Of the 4, only 2 went to the premiere. Oddly prescient, it was Paul and Ringo, and they were, shall we say, not fans. George and John refused to see it. Beatles lore! Sadly, while John refused to go and see it, he was treated, please note the air quotes, to 2 back-to-back showings on a flight he was taking from Rome to New York.
I'm surprised you didn't walk out.
It was shown twice because of a weather delay. Lucky John.
God.
Yeah. To film the finale, which we'll get to later, the makers of the movie basically invited anyone they could get to come, which explains the rather odd cast more or less recreating the cover to the album of the same name as the title of this movie.
It no, it doesn't.
Later, we're doing trivia.
Right.
2 weeks into the making of this film, and certain cast members had second thoughts. The Bee Gees tried to wiggle out, but to no avail. Yes, they were like, could we please leave this movie? No! The only person in this movie connected with the Beatles at all was Billy Preston, who plays, we're not really sure, but he did play the piano on the original version of Get Back, the song he sings in this movie.
Yes, a couple things. Billy Preston is the only person ever to be credited on a Beatles song other than the Beatles. The song Get Back is the Beatles with Billy Preston present.
Oh.
And you are mistaken. There is one other person involved in this movie who has a connection to the Beatles.
Oh, what poor schmuck is that?
George Martin.
That's later in the trivia.
Oh,
You're ruining
sorry.
it. And he's not in the movie.
Sorry, but he is connected with it.
3 songs from the soundtrack actually charted. Max, can you guess which one?
I'm going to guess Come Together.
Okay, that's one.
The Aerosmith one.
Yep.
And I'm out. I can't, oh, no, maybe Earth, Wind, and Fire's version of...
Got to Get You Into My Life.
Got to Get You Into My Life.
That is the second one. The third one I won't be surprised if you miss.
It can't be the Alice Cooper one.
No, it can't. By any stretch of the imagination.
And I doubt it's anything that George Burns did.
No.
Not Steve Martin.
Nope.
Okay, I have no idea.
It is Robin Gibb's version of Oh Darlin'.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Those 3 charted.
They don't even sing. He doesn't even sing the whole song.
Oh, yeah. No.
Okay.
Now, that soundtrack did set a record. It was the first album to return platinum, meaning that over 1 million, in this case 4 million, were returned to the recording company.
So isn't that kind of like anti-platinum, or
it's called return platinum, which is, it sounds good, return platinum. It sounds good, but you don't want it. And you've already ruined this, and who produced this album? None other than George Martin. That's who.
Yes, and then he gave up music and wrote Game of Thrones.
No, that's George.
Yes, it's totally the same guy. I saw it on the internet. Don't dispute me.
Yeah, sure, internet. The one that's in your head. When queried, George Harrison said of the Bee Gees and Frampton's appearance in this film, quote, "I think it's damaged their images, their careers, and they didn't need to do that. It's just like the Beatles trying to do the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones can do it better," end quote.
Oh, that's actually very generous of him.
It was a number of years later.
Yeah, that's very kind of him to say that, because the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, they're comparable.
Yeah.
The Beatles and Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees.
We'll get to that.
We will.
Like many bands, the Bee Gees' music and performances was owned by somebody else. When they finally managed to get the rights back in their hands, they only left one album out. This one.
Can't imagine. Oh, you're kidding. Excuse me. I have a heart attack and die from the shock of that news.
We want all our music back, except that one. There was another Beatles movie released the same year as this, I Want to Hold Your Hand, which we might get to later in this series. Steve Martin, since we were talking about Steve Martin's album Wild and Crazy Guy came out this year and charted a good deal higher than did this soundtrack. He made it to number 2.
Yeah, there you go, Steve.
Yeah. At the ultimate showdown... I can't say this without laughing. Yeah. At the ultimate showdown between Peter Frampton and Steven Tyler, the original script called for Tyler's death to be an accident. When the director tried to change it so that Frampton overpowers and kills Tyler, Aerosmith nearly walked off, as Joe Perry declared, quote, "There's no effing way that Steven is going to get directly offed by Frampton," end quote. Go, Joe.
I'm sorry, Peter Frampton could not beat up Steven Tyler. Peter Frampton could not beat up Liv Tyler.
Yeah. Okay. That's all the trivia, which I thought was plenty and somewhat humorous that I have. Do you know anything else? That, no.
No. I think that's plenty.
Right. So now it comes down to the plot. The
part
everyone's been waiting for.
Oh yeah. This is crucial to the movie.
Wow. Where to start? Well, it's more or less 1918, just after World War I, which was somehow won when Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band marched through the middle of a battle playing music which is somehow enough to get the fighting to stop. Deemed heroes, they play their songs all through the decades till the 50s, where, inexplicably, they're being memorialized in an American city called Heartland. Just as the dedication starts, the leader, Sgt. Pepper, dies of acute embarrassment. Or age. We're not sure. The band's instruments are given to some kids who grow up to be the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton, or the new Sgt. Pepper's, yada, 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 yada. They get heard by the evil Donald Pleasance, who I totally did not recognize in this film.
I didn't either for half the movie.
They get heard by the evil Donald Pleasance, who tempts them away from Heartland to come to dirty old Hollywood and become rich and famous. So they go. Meanwhile, mean Mr. Mustard moves to town in his dirty bus with Lurch from the Addams Family and starts to buy up real estate so he can bring arcades to Heartland and ruin it. It's all the plot of the evil FVB, a faceless computer program or something that has Mustard steal the original band's instruments and distribute them to some people remarkably named after other Beatles songs. Meanwhile, Billy Shears, played by Peter Frampton, is being tempted away from his sweetheart, Strawberry Fields, by the vampy Lucy, leader of the Diamonds, who will indeed later on play on a rooftop which is as close to the sky as she can get. Things seem to be going down the tubes, and only George Burns can keep the very loose threads of this plot from utterly unraveling. Realizing that fame and glamour aren't all they're cracked up to be, the boys grab Mustard's bus and go about recapturing their instruments. They get most of the way, then Earth, Wind, and Fire show up to do a song and distract the audience from what little story actually remains. Mustard captures Strawberry, his bus, and the instruments and brings them all to FVB, the future villain band, which, in real life, is Aerosmith. They have a nefarious scheme to do something which involves brainwashing and money.
No one cares.
It's a showdown between good and evil, or rather, Peter Frampton and Steven Tyler. The good guy, such as he is, wins, but Strawberry Fields is lost in the process. Deciding to end it all by jumping off the roof of a one-story front porch, his sadness suddenly summons the spirit of Billy Preston, who isn't dead to appear and put things back in their proper places and change the bad guys all into clergy, which isn't a mixed message at all. Then, everyone who is anyone in Hollywood and Leif Garrett sing a reprise of the title song and the credits roll. The end. The lowdown.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, huh?
That's pretty much it, because it doesn't matter, because none of the plot, this movie doesn't make sense. Initially, I don't think it's supposed to. It's sort of supposed to be a fairy tale. Except when it really isn't. I mean, the tonal shifts in this movie will give you whiplash.
I'm sorry, I didn't actually notice any tonal shifts. It starts goofy and it just stays there.
But you have an attempted suicide.
Oh, yeah.
You have the death of a major character who, I would like to point out, is then put in a glass Snow White coffin.
Yeah, that wasn't weird.
That wasn't weird at all. And you have... I want to get back to this, because this really gave me a new appreciation for our last movie, Across the Universe. You have all of these characters whose names are from Beatles songs, some of them rather obscurely, like the Bee Gees are all the Hendersons.
Yeah.
As in, the Hendersons will dance and sing, etc., from Mr. Kite.
Yeah.
The others are more obvious. But
you remember the Hendersons, Mark, Dave, Billy, and Bob?
Yeah.
My favorite was Dougie Shears. That was...
Yeah, played by no one I'd ever heard of.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Dougie Shears. No.
Yes, and Strawberry Fields, played by someone, Farina. This was her only acting role. I looked this up.
Wow, was that deep a
That's
scar?
it.
Huh?
She sang and a few others. But what I really want to talk about, and what the performance we really have to discuss, and it's too often overlooked, is that of Carol Stroiken.
My note was, what's Carol Stroiken doing here?
This was his, first of all, Carol Stroiken plays the Brute.
Yeah.
He's Mean Mr. Mustard's henchman.
Yeah.
And Carol Stroiken, you're sitting there going, who the heck is Carol Stroiken? I guarantee you know who he is.
Yeah.
He has been in everything. This was his first movie. And he got the part. This was some trivia that I did want to bring in. When he was walking down a street near Hollywood and Vine, and a woman stopped her car in the middle of the street, jumped out of it, left her car, and ran after him screaming, "We need you for a movie!" And it was this movie.
Wow. I mean, I think probably his best known roles are Mr. Hom from Star Trek Next Generation.
Yep. He was also Lurch in the Raul Julia, Angelica Houston Addams Family. Yeah. And the most iconic, I think, is the Giant in Twin Peaks.
See, I never saw Twin Peaks, so for me, it's not. He's this very tall man. That's his claim.
He's very tall. Guy's also, by the way, a pioneer in virtual reality hardware and software.
Oh, well, good for him. The performance of Carol Stroiken. I think he
walks away with the movie.
Yeah, sure. Well, and so I will say this. Donald Pleasance has been in everything. He was even bigger a movie horror than is Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, yes, or Nicolas Cage.
Caine.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Caine makes no bones about it. I will say this. Pretty much all of Michael Caine's performances are at least competent. And I don't think I've ever seen a bad one or anything approaching it. Donald Pleasance, I'm just going to say Pew Mayman and leave it right there. He literally will be if it was a $50 movie, he would do it. And I did not recognize him at all.
No. I mean, and part of it is the terrible hairpiece, which they point out is a hairpiece.
Yes.
A couple of times in the movie, he's moving it around. But you don't recognize him because he's playing a sleazy record producer, BD something or other.
Yeah. But he has this energy.
Big deal.
Yeah, oh, sure it does. But he has this energy that I've never seen in Donald Pleasance before. I'm actually going to give him a check mark because I didn't recognize him. Now that I know it's him, I still don't see it was him. It's totally different than what he usually does. He's the only actual known actor in this film that I think is actually acting.
I think he's one of the only people in this movie, period, who makes an effort.
Yeah.
He's the only one who puts anything into it. And they don't make him sing because he can't sing, but he recites the lyrics of I Want You.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even Rex Harrison them the way Steve Martin does for Maxwell's Silver Hammer. He just reads them.
Yeah. Well,
we'll get to Steve Martin. Poor
Yeah.
Steve. Anyway.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of poor going on. One of the poors that I'm not going to give is Peter Frampton. My first note was Peter Frampton was straight because he comes.
Yeah, I am sorry. I know this is offensive. I apologize. I have never seen anyone look so gay in a movie ever.
He skips into his first scene wearing white overalls with a red heart on them.
Yep. White overalls, a pink shirt. Oh my! His flowing blonde, kinked hair.
Yeah.
And again, I will give you got to give Peter Frampton his due. He is a phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah. Frampton Comes Alive is one of the highest rated albums of rock of all time.
But he is so wrong for this movie.
And I got to say, as good a voice as he has, I do not like his versions of the Beatles songs at all.
Not one. He doesn't. I mean, when he tries to do it with a little help from my friends. The
Bee
Lord.
Gees. I'm not going to say, I would say this. The Bee Gees, I think they do a very good job for the Beatles songs.
They do
I have no
with the
problem
harmonies.
with their versions of the Beatles songs. George Hearns, that was just, I think it was mean to us, and it was mean to George.
Trying to make George Burns sing Fixing a Hole Where the Rain Gets In, I'm just watching it going, what were they thinking? And when there is that moment they're doing for the benefit of Mr. Kite where he is walking arm in arm with Frampton and the Bee Gees, and they're singing together, and something in me died. That's all that it was so wrong. Look, I love George Burns. George Burns is an icon. He is a legend.
Yeah.
He is one of the great people of comedy and of vaudeville. He doesn't belong in this. He didn't deserve this. I hope they backed a movie. I hope that $13 million budget, I hope 12.9 of it went to him.
Yeah.
Because they also made a very odd decision in this movie.
Which one?
There's no dialogue.
Well, I don't think it's odd because the Bee Gees, of course, are very British. And for some reason, even though it's the Beatles and they start in World War I in England,
they thought the accents wouldn't work. So all the dialogue, it's all narrated by George Burns, a.k.a. Mr. Kite.
Well, it's not, though, because at various points in the film, we get title cards as if they're trying to do a silent movie.
Yeah.
And so my feeling is that what actually happened was that's how they did the film. It was all with the silent title cards. They realized how it was not working, and they called George to come back in and said, could you just, tell people what's going on? And then they just recorded that, and that's what we get.
It must have been. I think they actually did record the dialogue, but they listened to it and said, no, these guys are supposed to be from Heartland, USA. They're supposed to be pure middle America, despite the fact they're singing a British band's songs.
In California.
But so they can't have these British accents. People won't buy it,
Yeah, I think that they may have been trying to pull off an operetta. It just there's no plot. There's no plot. If you take a bunch of Beatles songs, you can't make a story because there isn't one, which is also true of this film.
Yeah,
there's a number of weird sounds going through this film. That we get two specific, very obvious Star Wars sound effects, which I'm like, why are those here? And then it turns out that the villain initially is the Cylons. So
yeah, they're the two with the computerettes. Yeah. For some utterly never explained reason, Mustard has these two Cylons in his van. They're fembots, basically. Yeah, they've got to be. They're sex robots, and they sing a weird They keep singing these weird digitized techno versions of what is it? She's Leaving Home, and I think When I'm 64.
Yeah.
The songs also. This is something about that reminded me of Across the Universe. Whatever weaknesses it had, and it had plenty. The songs kind of fit what was going on. Kind of. Or in interesting ways. And in here, it's just nope, we're going to do a song. Like when, in the plot, the band has gotten their standard Rich and Famous contract from from BD.
Yeah.
And they're about to leave via hot air balloon, because that's how you travel.
Yeah, with a heart on it.
And Strawberry sings a tender goodbye ballad of Here Comes the Sun. That's not a sad song. It's a joyful song. It's a sweet song. It's not, in Across the Universe, they did an interpretation of I Want to Hold Your Hand as a song of desperate longing, which it usually isn't done as, and it worked.
Max,
none of these work.
I have to disagree. I think it works because the song points out that the sun is out, and in that scene, the sun is in fact out.
I see. So I see. So it's a weather report.
I mean, it's not actually dawn.
But there is a sequence. There's one moment, I don't remember what's happening, where I honestly don't remember what the context
had that a
is.
lot.
Yeah, but the band turns and looks directly into the camera, and it frightened me. I don't know.
They could see you.
The Bee Gees and Frampton looking into my soul. I didn't like it.
Well, and to follow up your point, where it felt more or less in Across the Universe like there was a purpose for the songs. And again, there were some interpretations I really liked in that movie. I just wish they had all been like that. But at some point, they're just singing. It has nothing to do with the plot.
Yeah.
We're literally watching them fill up the soundtrack. It's like
sometimes,
pump, and it's like doop 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 doop. Up, gotta get a little bit there. We have
but
album
that's
2.
all this movie is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you want to look at protagonists versus antagonists, the only evil thing we actually see FVB, which doesn't even show up till we don't even know what FVB is until later on in the film.
Yeah.
The only evil thing we actually see them do is buy real estate and put arcades up in Heartland.
No. You are mistaken, sir. They also beat up George Burns, tie him up, and steal the apparently magical instruments of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which are, of course, the same instruments that the Beatles played: the tuba, the bass drum, the saxophone, and the cornet.
Yeah.
None of the Beatles played any of those.
Yeah, and the other part, the musical part, so they gives them to people that don't actually use them.
That's the thing.
For anything.
Why do they give them? They distribute them. It becomes like a bad D&D quest. It's like, all right, I will give each of the villains one of the things that the heroes must go and collect.
Yeah.
Or a video game. Yeah, they give the coronet to Steve Martin, who is Dr. Maxwell Edison.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to be this sort of plastic surgeon.
He's turning people into Boy Scouts, though, which...
Those were not Boy Scouts. Did you look at the coloring? Those were Hitler Youth.
Oh, okay.
The brown shorts? Yikes!
I just thought they were ugly.
That was creepy.
Okay, so FVB...
Future Villain Band.
Future Villain Band, the biggest evil in this picture is, in fact, Aerosmith.
Yeah, and they do the best. I thought, again, another comparison. The ironic thing for me, the songs I enjoyed most in this and in Across the Universe were the same song, Come Together, which Joe Cocker did in Across the Universe, and what Aerosmith did in this one.
And both
Weird
very different. Yeah, they're very different interpretations.
Yeah.
But I got to give Steven Tyler his due. He does a great version of it. What's really
he nails it.
Is, how many years later would this be? I think it's around 2010. Steven Tyler and a few other rock biggies were at a New Year's Eve party, and they decided to sing Come Together. And during the song, all of them, including Steven Tyler, are passing around the lyric sheet because they don't know the words. However, one of the members at that party who was singing the song did not need the lyric sheet.
I know.
Max, do you know? Would you tell our audience who that was?
That was one of the great musicians of our time, Weird Al Yankovic.
Yes, and you can find this video if you go look for it online.
Yep, it's great. Awesome.
And I can't forget who's... I want to say that Alice Cooper is one of the people there. I can't remember. But it's all these people doing Come Together. They swap the sheet for verses. And then Weird Al, he's just going all out. He does not need any lyric sheet. He just does it. But yeah, so Future Villain Band, the biggest evil known to man, and the best they could come up with was Boston's own Aerosmith. Now,
I admit Kiss would have been more theatrical looking.
The problem is they would have showed everybody else up with all that makeup and stuff.
Oh, that's true. The makeup and costumes they would have brought themselves would have been better than anything in this movie.
Yeah. Now, so let's take a step back and at least put some perspective on this film. This is 1978.
Yes.
There was a lot of things happening in 1978. None of them were good.
No.
So we're in the disco era.
We are at peak disco.
We have not quite gone over that hump that will give us the wonderful 80s music. We are not into new wave yet. We're still if you've got any taste, you're probably listening to punk. Because we're pretty much in post punk at this point. But disco has a lot to answer for, and this is one of the biggest pieces of evidence. There was this weird discoization, and that didn't necessarily just mean the music, but it was also the culture. So the Bee Gees, but bringing back old stars, and the old stars themselves trying to seem appealing to younger audiences. Would do things like you'd see Elizabeth Taylor showing up at Studio 54, which that's not weird. And hanging out with people like Michael Jackson, who has not become Michael Jackson yet, but he will soon. And quite honestly, entertainment had a different definition back then. Because quite honestly, this whole movie to me, especially at one point when they speed up the film, and the goofy music the whole thing feels like one big Donnie and Mauricio skit.
It kind of does. It really does. It's just like the weakest premise possible to hang together songs.
And especially when the Bee Gees are getting into, the Hendersons are getting into the balloon to go chase after FVB. I was like, is it the Bee Gees or is it the Hudson Brothers? I'm not sure.
My thought was, because they get in and there's like a Shazam moment where there's a flash of light and they're wearing these wild disco aerators costumes. Yeah. And I thought, oh God, it's Captain Cool and the Kongs from the Sid and Marty Krofft Hour.
One of the other things the 70s did, and I find you hear this a lot in the music of the entire decade, is oldie timey was a thing again. And so you'd hear a lot of songs that referenced the 1890s, like that era. And so the crossing of those weird band uniforms and disco was a thing. Basically the taste of the entire decade is in question, and it's on full display in this movie, quite honestly. I never liked disco, whatever. Some people like disco, it's fine. And the Bee Gees, let's not be overly cruel. They were exceedingly accomplished and talented singers. And one of the coolest things, I don't care for their music personally, but the thing is, they apparently started doing it just for fun. Like, they were just copying people they saw on TV. They didn't have lessons or anything, and they were brothers. I believe where the name... It's Brothers Gibb, isn't it?
That's where the name comes from, Bee Gees Brothers Gibb. There was also, there was a fourth Gibb.
That's right.
That was Andy Gibb, who went solo with his legendary song, which I'm sure everyone remembers, I Want to Be Your Everything.
All I know is that he died early.
The sad thing about the Bee Gees, and that's kind of one of the things that makes me uncomfortable watching this movie, is everyone except Barry is dead. And they all died young.
Is it Barry or Robin? I think it's Robin.
Robin died a few years ago.
Okay.
Barry is the only one left. I looked this up.
Well, you know why.
Why?
He looks like Jeebus.
In this, though, my God, Barry's hair is practically a separate character.
Well, I mean, that was the time. And to be fair, the rest of the Gibbs did not have as much luck with hair.
No,
it's pretty obvious, especially with Maurice at this point. But and then, for absolutely no reason at all, ladies and gentlemen, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, out of nowhere, they're doing a benefit concert for the benefit of Mr. Kite to save Heartland from mean Mr. Mustard, who is foreclosing on everything for some reason. Literally, there's no reason. He just does. And they have Earth, Wind, and Fire to show up to do, I have to admit, one of my less favorite Beatles songs, Got to Get You Into My Life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because they funkify it.
Well, you know what? I think that there is a purpose for them being there.
Yeah.
They're there to remind us what music actually sounds like.
I think they're also there to remind us that black people exist. Because until the final scene, this is a very white movie.
They wear white. They are white. Sometimes you can't tell Frampton from his overalls.
Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees are pretty much distilled whiteness.
Yeah, and then suddenly, Billy Preston, because Sergeant Pepper has died, they've made a commemorative weather vane of him. They've made a commemorative statue weather vane of Sergeant Pepper, a very known white British guy, and he's put up on top of City Hall or whatever, and yet as Peter Frampton's about to jump one story to his death onto the lawn,
or to the vicious spraining of his ankle,
the lightning hits it, it spins around and turns into Black Billy Preston.
Yeah. And he does actually, even for him, a rather dull version of Get Back.
Yes. I'm sorry I had to cut you out, but
I had to point out, and this wouldn't have ruined it, by the way.
Just saying.
What kind of cheap-ass town gives their favorite son a friggin' weather vane?
Yeah.
You couldn't be bothered to make a real statue? No, it's a weather vane. What, you had the $60?
Yeah, but the statue wouldn't spin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the spirit of music. I don't know.
I don't know. And yes, and then it's basically Deus Ex Preston or Deus Ex Weather Vane. Save us with your magic weather vane powers, Billy Preston. And he basically reverses all of the consequences of the movie.
Except our having seen it.
Except the fact that we saw it. He goes, zap, Strawberry Fields is alive again. Zap, I'm catching Billy Shears before he falls off. Zap, I'm turning Mr. Mustard into the Pope.
Yeah.
I want to know how the theology of that works, by the way, and I want to know if he would be accepted by the Catholic hierarchy. Because what he is dressed as, that is the papal regalia. Only the Pope wears that white and gold thing with the crozier. And he turns everyone into priests and nuns, all the bad guys. Or at least...
Are you sure he wasn't the bishop?
The power of costume change compels you. Because it's quite clear as they're looking at the clothing, he hasn't actually changed them. He's just given them costumes.
Well, I mean, this film is just sort of a barely dressed attempt at making a movie. So, there you go. Do you think that implies that there's some sort of message?
No! No, the message is, kidding, everything's fine, just enjoy the music.
I thought it was, try your hardest. If that doesn't work, threaten to jump off the porch, and then Billy Preston will come and save you.
Oh.
I mean, I suppose the film is meant to just be, let's have a good time with some Beatles songs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a jukebox movie.
Yeah, the weird thing is it's not even 10 years since the Beatles broke up. So, I mean, it's sort of like, part of it feels like, oh, let's do a memorial to the Beatles. And the Beatles are standing off the side going,
we're right here.
We haven't died. Not yet. We still have 2 years to go. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. They have to do a lot of lip syncing in this film, and it is universally terrible.
It's very obvious, especially Steve Martin's bit. I'm sorry, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the guest bits, him and Alice Cooper. Steve Martin looks like he has no idea why he's there.
Hey,
now again, he tries. First of all, Steve Martin doesn't really sing, and he doesn't try to sing. He Rex Harrison's his way through it he sort of sings the chorus. Steve Martin is not a singer. He can, however, sing when he has to. I don't know what they were doing.
He can carry a tune.
Yeah, I don't know why they insisted on that. And he's doing the full Steve Martin leaping about, body contortion, dancing, which doesn't match the song or the situation at all. But God love him, he is putting it all out there. Him and Donald Pleasance make the most effort in this movie.
And I got to give the nod to Donald Pleasance. I mean, quite honestly, Steve Martin, it's sort of like, and Jim Carrey is Anna Karenina.
Yeah, he's in there and he's only there for a few seconds. He's on for one song and then vanishes. Donald Pleasance shows up throughout the movie.
Yeah, and I still can't see him, but
Alice Cooper does the creepiest version of Because.
And I don't. So, did you remember what his actual character's background was?
Yeah. Oh, you mean father son? His name was like something Sunk, and he dropped the K and became a cult leader.
No, yeah, but do you remember what his profession was before he became?
Oh, what was he? An insurance salesman?
No, he was an evil crossing guard.
Oh, that's right. He was an evil crossing guard.
Yeah.
I want a job as an evil crossing guard. Where do you apply for that?
Now, to be fair, I don't know what the effects of him being in rehab had to do on his performance, if anything. Apparently he wanted to sing and they said, no, do this, whatever. But it's Alice Cooper. He could have been so cool and so creepy.
It could have been so much fun. And
just being Alice Cooper.
the song, I still maintain the vocals he does because the world is round. I mean, my God, he sounds like Frank Gorshin doing the Riddler.
Yeah, either that or he's looking for his precious.
yeah. But when we see him, he's just a guy in a white T-shirt.
Yeah.
You had Alice Cooper there, one of the most theatrical rockers of his time, and he was just a waste. Didn't do anything with him. Just like you had Steve Martin, one of the hottest comic, and musical talents of his time, and it's just sort of, no, we're just mug a lot and bound around.
Well, he had the last laugh because his album made it to number 2.
Yeah.
And Wild and Crazy Guy, I'm not sure how well that aspect of Steve Martin holds up. It was very much a product of its time, but Wild and Crazy Guy, he was gigantic.
Oh, he was huge. He was a massive hit.
For a comedy album to make it number 2 on the Billboard charts, whew.
That was unheard of. Yeah. George Carlin, I think, did that once, but that's the kind of company he was in.
And the last comedy album to make number 1 on the Billboard charts, I'm sure you know what this is.
Well, if it's comedy music, I assume it's Weird Al.
It is Weird Al's Mandatory Fun.
Ah, okay.
Yep. Who else do we have as guests in the guests? I think that's pretty much it for the musical guests.
I think we covered all the major ones, yeah.
I have a quick question for you, because I was doing this. I'd never seen this film, so I was not prepared for the weird ending part where it's and here we have. So this is who I picked out without looking at the credits, without looking anything up. And these are the kind of people they threw in with the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton.
We should explain. You should explain what the shot is.
It's just people.
It just goes from Billy Preston doing, magically zapping everything happy. He then just turns to an empty lot, goes zap, and there's a set of bleachers and about, 50 people standing on there singing the reprise of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah. And that group includes, these are the ones, again, these are just the ones, I know there's lots more. These are the ones that I actually visually is like, is that Carol Channing?
Yep.
Wolfman Jack.
He's there.
Jose Feliciano. Edgar Winter.
Yeah.
Leif Garrett.
Yeah.
Dame Edna,
a.k.a. Barry Humphries.
Leo Sayer. And possibly the strangest one in there that I could pick out visually, Helen Reddy.
Helen Reddy's there. Sha-Na Na is there. The whole band.
Sha-Na Na makes sense to me, at least.
Connie Stevens.
Oh, boy.
Al Stewart is in there for some reason. Dr. John is in there. Honestly, look it up. The list is enormous, and it makes absolutely no sense.
No. It's a who's who of who's not popular.
I just figured it was whoever happened to be on the lot that day.
Yeah. Leif Garrett was my favorite.
Rick Derringer is in there, too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Carol Channing is the biggest
head. What?
Get back. That's my best Carol Channing. It makes as much sense as her being there. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but when it came out, my sister loved this movie. Sorry, Val, but it's true. You know it's true. And I remember, maybe because she liked this movie, I remember it having way bigger of an impact, like it being everywhere and being a big thing and a cultural thing. And apparently it was everywhere, and then it got returned.
Yeah.
Do you remember this at all? I mean, well, we should.
I do. I saw it when it came out.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that when we do the closing.
At the big surprise ending. I'm trying to think if I've got anything else in my notes. I don't think. Oh, yeah, there's one little note I had in here. So when they get to Hollywood to show how evil it is, and it's probably around noon. All I could say was, wow, the hookers are out early.
Yes.
Because they're like vamping in front of a diner. As
by the way,
hookers do at lunchtime.
Before we wrap up, do you have any idea who was the guy who was playing Mr. Mustard was?
I thought it's like he looks familiar. At first, I thought it was Dr. Shrinker, but it wasn't.
No.
I don't know who that actor.
No, you don't. We don't. His name's Frankie Howard, and he is virtually unknown in this country. He was a major English comedian. He had his own show.
Oh.
He's been in a ton of stuff. He never made any impact on this side of the ocean.
And he still hasn't.
I don't know why they said, hey, let's get him. I don't know, maybe one of the Bee Gees was a big fan, or Frampton was.
Well, and that's still the weirdest part about this film, because it's denying its own nature. Like, the film shows us World War II, and it's obviously supposed to be Europe and Britain. World War I, yes.
World War I, yeah.
World War I. And it's obviously supposed to be the British or the Germans. Like, that's a thing. And then the next thing we know, they're the life and blood of Heartland, USA. There's literally no explanation for this. We're just, once we were there, now we're here. Mm-hmm. And they're the hometown boys, although they're not actually American.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the all-American boys, which is why we couldn't hear their accents.
Yeah. I mean, none of them, Peter Frampton. Oh, wait, is Peter Frampton British? No, he's
Yes,
American.
he is. Yes, no, okay. He's English, yeah.
I've never listened to Comes Alive. So let's see. Who in this film is American? George Burns, who's the only one who talks.
Yep, yep.
Billy Preston. Or is he?
I think actually Billy Preston may be English. I'm not positive.
Carol Channing.
Carol Channing, yep. And all of Sha Na Na. They're all Americans.
Yeah. So pretty much none of the main characters are actually American, but we're doing
Strawberry is, but character kind of goes a little far describing her anyway.
Yeah. And she's a barely adequate singer. She's fine.
Barely.
She's literally I don't remember her voice at all. It made no impression.
Nope.
But yeah, I'm at the end of my notes. We should get to the surprise.
Yeah.
The roundup. So Max.
Yes.
Why did you see this when it came out?
It was pretty big. They were hyping it, and I love Beatles music, and especially at that point, in 1978, when everyone else was tired of the Beatles, I was discovering them, and I thought that, oh wow, this is so cool.
What was do you remember your reaction?
Oh, I do.
And?
Why? Why did you do this?
Yeah.
I remember just sitting there going, how do you make Beatles music boring? And I'm going, that's how.
Yeah.
Because that is my biggest thing with this movie, is they leech all of the sentiment, the character, and the skill out of the songs, and they make them dull and bland. With the exception of Aerosmith and Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yep.
All the songs are so boring, and I didn't think that was possible.
In the 70s, anything is possible.
Oh, Lord. The acting is so bad. Donald Pleasance, absolutely, he leaves it all out on the field, but he's only, if you add up his screen time, I think he's in for 15 minutes.
I think you're being generous.
Probably. But, okay, whatever you want to say about the musical skills of Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees, they can't act.
No.
I mean, not at all. The Beatles did a better job in Help. At least they looked like they were they looked like they were stoned, but at least they were kind of interesting.
See our entire episode on Help. Now, have you seen the film since then?
I don't think so, no.
So, you got to watch it for this.
I did.
I made you.
Yes, so remind me to thank you with a large, heavy object.
No. So when you were a child, you were deeply disappointed. Your little heart was broken. You threw away all your Bee Gees albums and lit them on
which I never owned. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and
I threw away other people's Bee Gees albums.
You went and broke into their houses.
Yep. And stole their Bee Gees albums. Yep.
So you've had a lot of time to mature, to reassess. To get a better worldview of things, to see things in a more holistic approach. Now, looking back on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, now, how do you feel?
I am consumed with hatred. This movie is insulting to the Beatles. It's an assault on them. And it's just The lack of any... It's an insult to the audience, I think. I totally get why the Golden Turkey Awards nominated this for Worst Movie Musical of all time, and I still can't believe it was beaten out by At Long Last Love. But
yeah,
there's no effort. They don't try. Nobody except Aerosmith and Earth, Wind, and Fire, they're doing what they do. You can tell. That's just like, oh yeah, we're on a tour or something. We'll just do the same show we were doing.
Yeah.
And at least Steven Tyler, he throws himself into it. He's in it.
Yep.
But the rest of the music, the rest of the entire movie is so dull and lifeless and uninteresting.
Yep.
Now, you had never seen this.
No. I've been avoiding it since my sister came home with the soundtrack, loving it. Because I hated disco then, and I hate disco now. I hated it as a son, and I hate it as a mother. I chose it because I thought, hey, here's another jukebox musical. And also, I will admit, part of me was like, you know what? I've never seen this. Maybe it's actually aged and turned to this actually goofy, fun thing. Maybe it's... I'll be pleasantly surprised. Oh, I was surprised, all right.
Yeah.
As Max said, almost all meaning is stripped, and I do mean stripped, from the Beatles songs. There is... Oh, look, here's a song about Strawberry Fields because her name is Strawberry Fields. We're not even in a field when we sing it, and we make no reference to the place that it actually came from.
She is singing it herself.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to forget what my name is, so I'll sing this song.
I mean, why she doesn't go, me, forever, I don't know, but she could.
Oddly, one of the more painful ones to me is when the Bee Gees are singing A Day in the Life.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that they do it, incompetently, but they sound like a bunch of children who don't understand what the lyrics are. There's none of the... That is an incredibly painful song to listen to. It's this bleak, hopeless, dark, and it's supposed to be in a sad time, but the way they sing it, it's just like, I read the news today. Oh, boy!
And then the boy comes out. And no, there's no boy.
Oh, Lord.
It is utterly pointless. This honestly feels... If there was a 70s version of... Tommy Wiseau. This feels like there was somebody who had never done anything in Hollywood before, literally walked into Hollywood with a bunch of money and said, I'm going to make a movie and it's going to be great. That's what this feels like. There's no sense. I can totally see why the Bee Gees after 2 weeks were like, can we please get out of this?
That showed real sense on their part, yeah.
And sure enough, it actually kind of really did cave their careers. Right after this.
Yeah, they didn't.
I mean, disco was going away anyway, and that was...
Frampton held on. Frampton stuck around.
Well, Frampton wasn't disco.
True.
He was wise.
Yeah. He was pop, yeah.
Yeah. And rock.
To a degree.
Certainly, somehow, Alice Cooper didn't get hurt by this. He just got out of rehab and went played golf and continued to be Alice Cooper to this day. Even Alice Cooper going on The Muppets was good for him.
Yes, amazing. And also one of their better episodes.
Yeah, and you would think, like, who was the original quote-unquote king of shock rock going on The Muppets would basically said, well, we can write him off. No, he's still Alice Cooper. And apparently he's a really nice guy.
Apparently he's a sweetheart. And, I do have to say, when I was watching Aerosmith in this, I'm going, wow, Steven Tyler always looked like that?
He's aged oddly. I think he actually looks right now like a very nicely aged older woman. Aerosmith, it's fine.
Let's just say, Liv, I'm glad you got your looks from your mom.
I see some of her dad.
Just a little.
I can't see what they're trying to cash in on because there wasn't a Beatles craze at this point.
I don't think there was.
Thankfully, the one thing I can give them credit for is they don't try to disco-fy the songs. Yes, the Bee Gees are singing them, but they
don't change the arrangements to be disco arrangements. They don't run into a lot of disco nightmare stuff.
No, and I honestly think the Bee Gees harmonies are really quite astounding.
They did very tight harmonies. That's true.
But otherwise, you should avoid this like the plague, which isn't that hard because you have to rent it otherwise.
Seriously, this is not even a movie that you want to get stoned and watch because
No.
you will end up curled up on the floor whimpering like, no, when the Bee Gees stare at the camera and into your soul, your mind will shatter.
I honestly think if you're stoned and you start watching this, you'll just fall asleep.
Yeah, that's true. That's much more likely because God knows the music won't keep you awake.
No. But let's talk about that poll question we'd like to reiterate because we want to, speaking of jukebox musicals, we would like to know what musician or band's music would you make a jukebox musical out of?
And how can they tell us?
Yeah, do tell us. How would they tell us? They would tell us through many different ways, such as email. You can email us directly. You'll know it goes right to our box and that we will see it personally. Our eyes will cast tracks over your email if you send it to us at maxmikemovies.com. iTracks, it's a thing. Look it up.
Yep.
You could also leave a comment on our website, which is surprisingly at maxmikemovies.com. We have all of our episodes there. You can look at them singularly. You can look at them by series, and you can leave comments about this show, any of our shows, or give us ideas for new shows. And we're actually going to be asking you for some help very soon. If you like to listen to us on a podcast app, you probably already are, but you can find us on ones such as the Apple Podcast app or the Google Podcast app, or I don't even know where we're not at this point. We're on Amazon, Amazon Play? Or
Amazon Music.
Music. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio, lots of different places.
All over the place.
And of course, we are still on social media because that's the thing. For the time being, we are still on Facebook, which is Max Mike Movies.
Yep.
We are still on Twitter, although I don't know if that's
for the moment.
Yes. Yeah. Although, we don't want to disappoint all 6 of you.
Hey, 7.
Oh, 7. I'm sorry. Yeah. But we are still in the midst of the Beatles, and I think we've kind of played out the jukebox musical, haven't we? I think
we have.
Oh, good. So now
we're going to be
something more serious.
Well, no, not at all. We're going for, in fact, a parody/tribute of a lesser-known band, the Prefab Four.
Oh, the Monkees?
No, the Ruttles.
The Ruttles.
We're going to be watching the Ruttles. All You Need Is Cash.
Huh.
Yep.
Ruttles.
Does it sound strange? Come back next week and find out what's happening, or has Max finally had an episode and needs to be taken away?
Oh, that's been true for 192 episodes.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.